And then today we're going to be covering community tech stack. I know that was a really popular topic when we were looking for feedback on what to present on. So today we have our special esteemed guest, Stan from Anaplan, who's going to be going over SSO and personalization. Cassie will be going over platform and tools. I'll be going over platform selection and tech stack architecture. And then we have some time for Q&A and discussion at the end as well. All right, Stan, I'll give it away to you.
Thank you guys for having me. Appreciate it. This is awesome. I also love talking about this kind of stuff, and it's hard. Khoros is our big platform, and I work with a lot of Khoros customers I've talked to, so this is awesome to have a bigger group. So yeah, I'll talk to you guys a little bit about how we kind of ran with SSO at Anaplan for the community and all of our properties, and we're using SSO really as our foundation for a lot of personalization. So I'll talk a bit about that. I'll go to the next slide, jump right into it. So it's one of those things, pandemic ruins my memory, but about 18 months ago, 2 years ago, we launched SSO in our community. It's powered by Okta. Prior, it was all of these different properties you see on the screen. We've actually added one or two since. You'd have to have a different username and password for every single thing. We've never had SSO within our core Anaplan product or any of our digital properties. So we as a community team, it's kind of a weird thing of my role. I probably should have started with that, but my role at Anaplan is it's a mix between operations and technology. So I do everything from managing all of the behind the scenes, keeping the lights running, to the technology stack, to helping honestly do everything else. I joined Anaplan when it was a team of, I joined as the third and fourth employee. We joined together, and we're a team of 14 to 15 people now. So it's grown a lot in the 4 years I've been here. So with SSO, we wanted to connect the experience, make it seamless. So for us, the first piece of that was using Okta. Okta is a weird one for a lot of companies, I know, where a lot of companies use Okta as their front door internally in their enterprise. It's usually ran by IT for application access. So we're using an instance of Okta that's external. So it's actually a different instance than our internal employee instance. We manage it separately, and our employee instance is actually hooked up to it. So that's how our employees get in. And then similarly, I call out customer SSO on here as well, which is a question we get asked a lot, is we do allow our customers to actually bring their own SSO to our community. So we have probably a few companies maybe even that are here right now. Otherwise, a lot of big companies will have us get hooked up with their IT team and actually hook up SSO within Okta, so that if you're a really big enterprise company, your Anaplan community tile will actually show up in Okta, or if you have an SSO, whatever the application may be. That alone, we've seen huge engagement spikes with, where if we don't have to force users to go and register, just day one, you launch your new company on Anaplan, and all of a sudden the community access shows up with your Anaplan access. Double the engagement, double the amount of people that actually logging in and taking training, reading the forum post, everything really. So that's a huge benefit. I call out that a lot of people, I never expected that to happen, but it's been a little secret sauce that's happened. Otherwise, that's where we came from, was really just the last year or two was connecting all the systems and getting it all tied under one single email and password. And then the next slide's when the real fun starts. So, and by all means, throw any questions you guys have out and I'll answer them. And I know there's a few from yesterday already. So community accounts, where we are. So this is what I'm working on tremendously right now, really. So unifying our post-sale experience across our platform. So we're using the SSO, and the next slide gets in a little more detail, to actually integrate the experience. So rather than getting 5 or 6 communications from 5 or 6 different platforms, we're doing our best to actually centralize everything so we can send out more of a digest or more real time based on what we want to communicate out, rather than right now, probably, that's the next slide, you'll see it, but we use Bevy, Khoros, Coveo, Tatara, it's a Moodle version of Moodle for Learning Center training, and a few other platforms. So there's a lot of different notifications, a lot of different settings, profiles, everything in there. So we're using this to set that foundation where everybody within our community will have a central profile, central avatar, all of your settings will be hosted in one spot. But then that allows us to also, on top of that, communicate out a single voice across all of our properties. Community account sync to your corresponding Anaplan account. this is one that our product team gets me on all the time, and it's actually on them. So we have for years wanted to connect our community with our core product. Single account, you don't have to have two different accounts as you do today. One is we're a SaaS company, but it's very financially driven, or financial software. A lot of confidential data, so trying to allow people to take their accounts with them, which happens a lot with Anaplan. If they move companies and things like that, it becomes impossible. So that's one of the reasons we kept it severed, but we found ways to integrate it so we can actually tie all the data together behind the scenes in our enterprise data warehouse. Data architecture, run the business, operations alignment. I call this out and it's more of a pet peeve of mine. I'm sure many of you guys have orgs that use Salesforce. And if you're anything like any company I've ever worked in, your Salesforce data is complete trash and or very chaotic, where your accounts are who's reporting up into through who. It's one of those things like you could ask, how many customers do we have today? And you get different answers based on how the reports are being pulled in Salesforce. So we're using Okta as our identity management for everything. So we're trying to change the way we look at it, where any data that comes into Okta, we know it's 100% up to date. There's a actual plan, so it's going to get updated in the moment. So every single day we have different integrations running to ensure that any data coming into Okta is actually the most up-to-date, accurate, transparent data. So there's no confusion around the numbers. And then we put a lot of process behind the scenes of different teams if you want to get more data into Okta. If you want to jump to the next slide, I'll start to talk about that. Is the end of the day, we're going to start collecting information from our users. So we want to be able to, this is the stuff we're driving towards now, is post-sale, how do we do onboarding, feature adoption, user lifecycle management, et cetera, et cetera. At the end of the day, it's how do we really get to relevancy and personalization? So if I know your persona, which today, it's one of those things I think a lot of companies probably don't, you guess what personas are in your company. We're just going to start straight up asking our users when they first log in or eventually in the journey, what's the primary things you're planning to do with our platform? And then similarly, what are you planning to do in our community? How can we help you? And then using that data at the bottom here, you can kind of see some of the acronyms that we've come up with: community account, registration, card stack, notifications. It's ultimately building all of these little kind of micro projects up into the bigger one, but registration's live right now in our community. The card stack is what I'm actually working on this week and hopefully be live in a few weeks. But it's the idea of, a lot of you guys are probably familiar with like Pendo or various onboarding tools. We essentially built our own on top of Okta so that everything I know about you as a user across any of our properties, I can set up triggers to do different model pop-ups in community at different spots. I can advertise events to you. And we built it globally. So we built this with community in mind. I have a team of 2 engineers that work with me. So that's the cool part, is we got a nice team where we get to do fun things like this. But we built it with global. So how can we take this and embed it into our learning platform, embed it into our product Anaplan so that users can start to get the benefits of community wherever they're at. And that kind of goes alongside the notification settings, tracking. It's allowing us to actually centralize all the data we collect, feed it into something like Coveo, which is our search tool. But Coveo, for any company that does use it and uses it more in depth, it's actually a relevancy tool where you can use it to more design your web layouts, more dynamically generate which content's going to show up for which users. So the more data we know about, I conflate it into like Facebook. It's the creepy, stalkerish Facebook knows everything about you. We're doing it in the lesser, more safe way, but all the data we know about you and our community, how can we deliver the relevant content? So the ultimate dream then is the next slide, maybe. This is our card stack. This is just the bare minimum example of what we're doing. And it looks, these are our early mock-ups that'll look a little cleaner when we launch it. This is where when you first log in, we'll prompt you for different information about you. But the same technology allows us to, instead of prompt you for information, we could advertise an upcoming user group that's within 50 miles of your address because we know your zip code, or if we know there's an upcoming event taking place, things like that. So trying to figure out how we can really use all the information we have rather than just report on it, actually use it to drive the experience. I'll try to jump to a few questions because I see a few in the chat. But full-time job, yeah, this is primarily my full-time job. My role, it's hard to describe, and I hired a mini version of me a few months ago, and that was one of the hardest things to hire for. I sum my role up as kind of being a mix of product manager, program manager, operations, and reporting, kind of all in one. It's partially because we're such a small team in a bigger organization. We're doing a lot of things at once. Um, Hub and spoke model. This is where we're trying to get to with everything at the end of the day. And it's kind of a dream I think a lot of people talk about is how do you turn your community into that hub where it's the central spot that every user wants to go to. It might not necessarily contain everything across all of our digital properties, but we're trying to bring everything to the user when they first log in. And again, personalize it to them. So again, this is a mock-up. It doesn't actually live in production yet. Something our former UX designer loved Pokemon. So we have a lot of Pokemon in our pictures. But this is the goal where when you log in, we can give you notifications or event triggers, especially things like learning. Learning's so critical. We really think learning and community go hand in hand together. So how do we bring that learning experience that today it's more separate in its own platform? So we're building the integrations to start pulling all of your learning progress directly into your community profile. And then similarly, if we know your persona, we can start to build those automated training really flows or workflows out for you. So if we know you've gone in the platform, tried to use a new feature, and we do have analytics in our platform when you do or don't use something. So then we could trigger training on the back end to say, hey, you tried to use it, you only spent 5 minutes and stopped. So in community, we'll actually start throwing you more content and training to try to get you to further adopt, further use the product. And like it says there at the bottom, we try to help by analyzing your previous journey to determine your needs and offer all the ways we can help in the moment. So my ultimate goal is anticipate your needs before you got it. It's kind of be Google when you hit Google and you type in 2 letters and Google knows everything you already got to search for. That's my ultimate goal. I want to be that intelligent so we can help drive you wherever it is. Again, like any community, we have content is growing faster than our own user base is growing at times. So there's more content than anybody could ever look at. So that was kind of the reason a lot of this work started in the first place was how do we take all this content and actually get it in front of the right people? And I think, so that was most of my stuff about SSO and personalization. So let me really quick see if there's any other questions in there. Did I miss anything specific on that? Data warehouse. So it is shared by the rest of the org. So we're still growing. I mean, like many smaller companies, I think we're at 1,500 people or something like that now. So we're maturing a lot over the past few years. So last year we launched more of an enterprise data warehouse. And then one of my guys that works for me is a reporting manager. So he's currently working on getting all of our Khoros data, Bevy, Coveo, really all of our data from our different systems integrated into the enterprise data warehouse. And then similarly, once that's done, we'll take all the relevant user data that we're pulling in and push it back into Okta. And for folks who use like Khoros or various gamification platforms, we're then using that to drive badging and gamification. So if you're in our learning center, which is not connected to Khoros, we'll, every time you complete a training and you should get a badge, we'll push it into Okta. Okta will push it into Khoros. It's 100% automatic then. There's no manual uploading of CSVs and trying to manage who got what badges when. We're just going to create a workflow essentially with Okta to automate all of it. And then really quick, I'll hit on the SSO stuff because there's a few questions I had written down that you guys sent over. Common issues. The biggest one for me for common issues with SSO is anytime a customer wants to integrate with us, it's almost become a joke. I have a Confluence page with about 20 customers who are, quote, in progress of integrating SSO with us. But the problem is they can never figure out who at their company they need to talk to actually work with us. It's usually their IT teams, but for larger orgs with 100,000 people, it's a needle in a haystack finding the right guy usually. That's one of the biggest headaches. Otherwise, it's actually the opposite of, we just launched in our, part of our learning team is they launched a certification platform where it's going to be proctored certifications. So they launched that without coming to our team to set up SSO, because in their mind, it was going to take 9 months to do something like that. For anybody who has set up SAML or anything like that in Okta before, or done that piece of it, it's about a 5-minute configuration. It's actually really simple and easy to configure new apps or bring new companies in. I never used Okta before this job, and I've never truly been trained in Okta, but I've been able to kind of figure my way around there to make it work. But again, customers love it once you have it all connected. Similar question. What should someone always ask another vendor platform when it comes to SSO integration? I think there's two ways for that to answer it. One is anytime we're looking at using a new vendor. So I'm usually the one bringing on new vendors platforms for community. My first thing is always, do you guys support SSO? And two, do you guys have an open API set? We've used platforms in the past who've actually kicked out of our ecosystem because they were usually closed systems that didn't have an API and or didn't support SSO. So for us, it's become kind of a deal breaker where if you can't integrate more seamlessly into our experience, we probably won't want to do that. And then the other piece of that, what was I going to say? We did get help initially to launch SSO. We had Okta, actually, we used the professional services team to help us initially launch, at least on Khoros and our learning center. And that helped, especially for us. We didn't have a quote Okta admin like a lot of IT teams do. So they helped us tremendously, just give me the handholding I needed. I'm a tech guy, so I can learn it really quickly, but it saved me a ton of time having to go through the training of getting up to speed. Same method internally for employees as you do with community, why or why not? So like I said, we do for the most part the same. So our employee instance is hooked up. So as soon as a new employee gets created in Workday and it hits our internal instance of Okta, it gets moved over into community. And then similarly, during that integration, we give them all their permissions for community. So if you're an employee, we do have a private employee community area in our community. So we'll give you permissions there. If you're a manager, you might get more higher permissions to do some things. So all of that happens in that integration as well. A few people I know mentioned security concerns. For us, luckily, it almost goes out the window with Okta. Okta has become such a industry standard within, it seems like every single company I work with anymore is using Okta. So much of it's hosted on them. And then there's some of the pieces that we've built internally for either registration or login. But again, it's more standard how you handle authentication. So no real concerns. It's actually, in terms of getting it up to speed and going through procurement for us, which is usually a huge headache, again, being a financial type of company, they blew past our security and legal teams without a problem. Somebody asked about two-factor authentication. We don't use it today. If you ask me why, I don't have a great answer. We do have the ability to enable it. We just haven't yet. I think as we've added more and more platforms beyond just the core community into our ecosystem for SSO, we'll have no choice but to enable it for security reasons. Previously, when it was just Khoros, honestly, we didn't care so much just because it was just your community account, but that's changing. So probably next 6 months, you'll see it enabled in our community. But it is simple to do through Okta. They luckily have, it's all built out through Okta, so it's not a lot of complexity for that. Somebody asked about the story of Rafiki, which is in either my profile picture and or one of the pictures in here probably. But I'm a big Disney nut as well. So been going to Disney World my whole life, and growing up, I wanted to be a Disney Imagineer. So that's my background, as I am a child at heart. So I love using Lucidchart and throwing images, and again, pre-memeing the internet days of just like, I'm an image guy, so I like to throw images and have fun with everything I'm doing. Plus, it's more like a pro tip for myself. Whenever I talk to people who are not technical, as long as you have fun cartoons included in there, they instantly understand it better and faster. I don't understand it myself, but they do. So cartoons end up in almost everything I build for a deck. And did I have any other last questions on there? Oh, we just launched 2 platforms at SSO. Well, question for Stan, if SSO is considered a barrier for some users to join. This is a weird one for me, where I argued this with my team the other day, because I read a study the other day where it's probably somewhere like Indie Hackers, but ultimately you turn off that email verification and you get a much higher attach rate of people actually going into your community or using your product quicker. The flip side is, so many people, I think for us, the biggest gotcha is people register and you do have to go to your email and activate, just like you do for most newsletters and things like that. We verify your email. We have about a 5 to 6% drop-off rate where people do register and just never activate their account. That's probably the most challenging one. And that, I say it's most challenging because we just hour and a half ago finished our annual event, which is really cool that we did our annual Anaplan event, but this year we got to actually co-host it or co-brand it with community. And they chose to, usually our Anaplan events team finds a third party, but they let us use Bevy this year, which is awesome. So we branded our registration page and branded our annual event all throughout community, really. What we've seen, and this is kind of just, again, a hilarious tidbit of information, but the amount of people not finishing registration skyrocketed when we went to our annual event and had those folks registering. And this is more my theory, but it's the sales and marketing folks who aren't really community users as often, or at least in our community. They're not the more model builders, folks using the product. It was much more confusing for them. I don't know why. Again, we simplify the process as much as possible, but the amount of questions like, how do I log in? How do I reset my password? It skyrockets when you get a different audience like that. So that's a big learning for us next year, is how do we go into that and simplify that entire registration flow and process. Any other questions I'm missing so far that maybe came in the chat?
There were a few in the chat. One said, is that enterprise data warehouse the same shared warehouse used by the rest of the org?
Yep, so that one is. At the end of the day, we actually use, for the most part, I shouldn't say that, we actually use Google now for it. Previously, we used to use our own product, Anaplan. Again, we try to eat our own dog food as much as possible, but it's not really meant to be a data warehouse tool. But we luckily do integrate our product community into our own product for a lot of data analysis and how everybody in our entire company can see it. So we're a planning company and we have like data models that are kind of similar to what you'd see like in Excel, but ultimately everybody in our entire org can log into our models and actually see all the data. And then the cool part for them is they can tie it up with our customer success team and their models. So all the sales data, revenue data, they can actually pull that out by company and compare it directly to all the community data. So they could be like, this is the things we do too, is like how much revenue is growing by usage in community. So they can look at specific users, see if those key users have been using community, taking training, and if not, that's, again, we're trying to fight some of our teams to do more active things. But how do you go after those users then? If we can prove that if you use community, you expand your business 50% with them, how do we force those users to start using community more? So that's how we're trying to force data really in front of people.
Cool. And then Andy asked, because he's trying to solve for this right now for some re-platforming work. He says, how are you reconciling identity settings between the different platforms, SSO and your account side? Like if you can change your name or location in each, what happens?
Yep. So that's where hopefully we'll have it rolled out for just Khoros community first, and then we'll roll it everywhere else over the next coming months. But we're building out our own settings and profile page, and then we're literally just hiding it from all the other properties. So in Khoros, for example, because I'm sure a few of you are familiar with Khoros, you have your settings and profile page in there. What we've been doing is essentially rebuilding it in-house, our own, but it's powered by Okta. So as soon as you log into Okta, it'll send all those updated details downstream to not only Khoros, but all the other downstream systems. So as all of the systems get updated, we'll hide all the profiles. At the end of the day, you'll have a single global profile settings page for everything, for all 7 or 8 platforms I think we have now. Hopefully that answered it maybe. But yeah, that's a cool part of Okta, is Okta will act as the central tool or connector to bring it all together for us. So everything in Okta will have profile attributes set up for every possible attribute in every system. And then we'll use that to align everything. And then Okta kind of is the translation service for us for all of our different properties. I'm trying to read if those are comments. Is that it?
That's all that I saw, unless anybody had anything else.
Yeah, I think you covered it.
Sweet. If you guys have any questions, throw them in there. Otherwise, I know a few folks want to know about this too. So this is something I built a few years ago, probably. It used to be much, much smaller, and it keeps growing. But this is how, again, I'm visual and I like to show things, because people all the time are asking us to describe community, and we have huge decks all the time that we can run through all the different programs and things we do, but it gets so complicated. So this somehow became what the image looks like for us, but this is everything for us in one slide of what we as a community team do. On the top is really all of the different programs we support. Our community, we are kind of embedded within every single piece of our org, from, like I said, learning, training, to our Anapedia, which is our help documentation site within product. But then we do events, UX research, we have an idea exchange. it's all throughout there. And then we do a lot of beta testing of, say beta testing, but it's really launching new programs, but it's usually a lot of trials. So that's how we did AMAs for a long time. That kind of morphed into live events. That kind of morphed into what we call Anaplan Live, which is usually 1 or 2 day events once a quarter where we bring in different members of our community and our product team and really just do live events within our community. Below that's really all of our primary tool set. So this is for me, especially when I'm talking to other engineers or product folks, trying to explain how our tools can work within the greater ecosystem. But Coveo, Khoros, Okta, those are the big tools, community related. And then we have Bevy as well, a huge piece of that. And then Tatara is our training system. And then we have some other Khoros tools. We use LinkedIn, YouTube. And then right below that is really all those other kind of subsystems we use. So everything from Jira to Google Analytics. We have Heap internally for analytics across the board. So part of my job is really trying to figure out how I can tie all these different systems together to really create a better experience. And then below that is our teams. Like I said, our team, it's probably missing 1 or 2 people on there now, but 14, 15 people on our team now between my side, operations, technology, and then we have folks dedicated to content and groups, as well as events. So we have a few folks just dedicated to events or doing video productions. And I always throw on there who our customers are, because this is one of those things that I think a lot of people forget about. But at the end of the day, everybody, for us at least, is our customer, including internally. It's one of those things lately, I say lately, but I heard it my whole life here at Anaplan is community. I'm sure this is similar to most of you, like community works in a silo. But the flip side, I'm talking to every single team at all times in our entire org. So it's almost like community for us is a product, and it's that constant prioritization of I'm trying to please everybody, but I can't ever please everybody. So at the end of the day, everybody internally, our partners are a huge customer of ours. We do have a sub-segment, I can't talk today, of our community for partners. So it's dedicated to them. They have our partner team that does all the content management in there. So again, not just our normal users of our platform, we are across the board trying to please everybody. But that's our robot really in a quick 2-minute explanation, I guess. And then the next one, if you wanted me to talk about kind of our architecture, I can there. Robot have a name. We don't. I actually just call him the community robot. It started as just a diagram, and then I literally named it community robot, and somehow it's stuck in our company. So people share it around our company as the community robot now. And this is our architecture, kind of high level. I had to take a few things out to make it censored so I could show it. But at the end of the day, again, it's kind of, you can go to our community, you know what it's hooked up to in there. But again, this is more, everything green is really what I oversee and manage. And then blue or whatever we want to call that, half tealish blue green color in there. It's kind of the gray area where a few of us, some of our systems are kind of in a gray area where we share responsibility. Coveo, for example, we, the community team, brought it into the company. We launched it, but now we're trying to use the tool, organize our enterprise-wide. So how do we integrate it into our core product? How do we integrate it in all the other properties? So we've recently handed that off to our actual product org so they can actually help manage it. So I'm helping kind of steer it in ways, but they're trying to take it and actually run with and build it something bigger. So that's one of those things we do with our community as well, is we've had a lot of these platforms or programs that start in community and they kind of grow and morph into a bigger thing that they run with. But yeah, otherwise we have Okta, Khoros, Bevy, and like I said, all the data flows between the systems as well, which is the biggest, sometimes hardest piece, is finding out who can help integrate everything within our org. But that's what that is how we integrate everything together. Any questions? I realize I've talked for a while, so I want to make sure I give you guys some time back.
No, I think this was great. And I think, SSO and connecting all the platforms and providing a seamless user experience is something that a lot of community teams are interested in right now. And so I think, this was a really helpful conversation, especially for me. I'm kind of working on it right now. So a lot of knowledge tidbits there.
It is 4 years of work. So I think that's the one call that I can add. It's not like we did this overnight. We started when I joined anyways, we just had Khoros. It would have just been one box on here. So this is 4 years of growing up and trying to figure out what we want to be when we grow up. Cool. Well, I appreciate it. Hopefully I'm helpful for somebody out there.
Love it. And now we know who to reach out to when we need
Yeah,
some
and then by all means, if anybody wants to chat
questions.
more, like I said, I love chatting. So if you ever want to chat one-on-one, this is my jam and things I love to talk about. So hit me up.
Are you in this only in the CMX channel or community club as well? Just so people can know where to
I feel
reach out
like
if
I
they have
was
any
once in
questions.
the community club. So if somebody wants to drop a Slack or a link in there, I'm gonna go join it because I don't have it in my Slack right now. But I'll go jump in there as well.
Yeah, do it. Awesome. Thanks, Dan. Cool. Well, I will take it away as far as platforms and tools. Like I mentioned at the beginning, I'm looking through this through our leader lens. That's who I'm like mainly supporting in our events. So next slide, Tiff. I do like to set the standard. We are under the marketing org. So setting context and just letting you all know who our leaders are, because any chance that I get to like brag about them, it's amazing. We have over 400 Atlassian community leaders. So these are people that are at answering questions online, writing long form content, and also hosting events in their local areas or virtually. Next. And so majority of our leaders are actually hosting events. And so we have over 700 in the last year and over 60% net new attendees. Next. And then on the online side, we've had leaders answer over 20,000 questions, helping over 550,000 of our members and writing over 300 articles, long form content. And we have no plans to stop. So that is why I'm focused on supporting these people to make sure that they have everything that they need to just keep scaling this leader program. Next slide. Oh yeah, and then just because they are real people, I like to give the visual of that as well. This is in Nuremberg, one of our ACEs, and that's what we call Atlassian community events. So diving into the platforms that support these amazing human angels, I want to touch on the platforms that we use to make sure that they're successful. I won't go into depth on like each single one, but the ones that I don't get to touch on, I'll do a high level overview at the end. So things like our event platform, how we visualize data, program insights, things like that. So starting with Bevy, we do use Bevy to host our all of our community events. So if you're not familiar with Bevy, it's an amazing tool to just have your leaders, your ambassadors, what have you, have access and like full autonomy to publish events, reach their members. They've got, I could go on and on, but it's a great tool for our leaders to just make sure that they can get the job done. They're the boots on the ground. And they have, like I said, autonomy over their destiny. So we do use Bevy as we require our leaders to use that to publish events, but we recently procured Meetup just to get more eyes on our events. There's over 40 million people on Meetup. Nobody's like, hey, we're Atlassian community events on Bevy. So Meetup kind of helps us close that gap, or if people are looking for these events, it's just one other place that they can find it. And Bevy does have an integration with Meetup. So like whenever you publish an event, it automatically publishes to Meetup. So that's easy for our leaders. And yeah, Bevy still is our single source of truth for data and reporting, because the Meetup analytics, all that stuff gets tied into the Bevy dashboard. One thing to note about our Bevy data, all of it is sent to our CRM on a daily basis, every 24 hours. So we know when our leaders are hosting events, when they're not hosting events, all of that. We're tracking that. Next slide. And then also to ensure our leaders are happy and that we're giving back as they're giving to the community, we do have a swag store, and we recently revamped the whole way that we reward our contributors. So basically our swag store does live on Shopify, and it's informed by the data in our CRM. So you see years active, you see points earned, you see events hosted, little tiles there on the site. And all of that is informed, like I said, from our CRM. So on a monthly basis, this gets automatically updated, and our leaders are sent an automated monthly email that says where they stand and what they need to do next to earn the next thing. So it's not this like, what happens next? Or they know the path forward, and updates them on their progress. This is really new. So we're still iterating on it, but it's just been a nice to have as far as like self-serving, because with over like 400 leaders, we used to have it in a Jira service desk, and then we were going and having to handle that one by one. And so this really frees up a lot of time for our community managers. Also too, I guess, just to note on that, you don't have to go back, Tiff, but we like own the Shopify site, but we do have our a vendor, Bravo, who handles all the fulfillment and shipping for us as well. They have access to that site. But just to show you, these are the things that we're giving. We do reward them for their contributions. So like how they're contributing online and at events. And then the next slide will show we're also rewarding them for their tenure. So how many years they've been active with us. It's hard to believe there's like someone going on 10 years. So it's like, oh, wow, cool. How are we continue to reward you? Because t-shirts and stickers and stuff are only cool for so long. And one thing to note is we didn't just make up these items. We weren't like, hey, I think they'll like these. We did a focus group and surveyed a lot of our leaders to see what was important to them and what brought value. A lot of people said no items and just like little sweet notes or like words of affirmation really floats their boat. So along with all these items, they get a little poem written by our famous Erica Moss, if you haven't heard of her. But yeah, next slide. While this is in line with awards, but it's not necessarily swag, I did want to touch on this because it's just changed my life in the last year. So if you are not familiar with the Tremendous platform, it allows you to send virtual gift cards globally. And if you've ever tried to send a virtual gift card to somebody who lives outside of the US, you've probably ran into a few blockers of like, how do I send this? And so that platform Tremendous allows you to send virtual gift cards at scale, Visa, Amazon, PayPal, different stores within different regions. And like I said, it allows you to send them at scale, and they do have an API that you're able to send these rewards from. So I did want to do a quick plug with Tremendous. Next slide. Data visualization, we do use Tableau right now. I've heard a lot of talks internally about us moving to Amplitude, but we're still on Tableau as of right now. So Bevy does have a dashboard with data, but we wanted to get a little bit more granular. So we did have our data engineering and data analytics team build this out for us. So this wasn't just me on my own. I did have a few little helpers here, soldiers. But we are looking at more granular data from Bevy, like as it pertains to their chapter, which is like their cities. Also getting more granular with survey data, CSAT by region, by product type, deployment type, all the stuff. When we do have this for our online program as well, we're actually working on getting a dashboard that sees like all of it and how leaders are engaging on both sides. But as of right now, they're in two different places, but we are using Tableau for that. Next slide. And then this is our community leader hub. So this is also very brand new. This is it's still our MVP, where it's an ongoing process, but this is our one-stop shop for leaders to get content for their events, to get graphics and logos, to read our guidelines, to see who is on the community team, how to get in touch with them. Like, it is literally anything a leader would need to be successful. And as you see here too, we like link out to the different platforms that they use or that they have to support them. But yeah, this is also an ongoing process with our leaders. We like to say that we like to co-create with them. We're never just like launching anything at them. This is all, anything that you're seeing is like, especially if it's leader facing, it's been built with them so that, yeah, we're just meeting their needs along the way as we try to scale the program. And then a service desk. Also too, with so many leaders, you know, things can get, even with not so many leaders, let's just say like 15 people, somebody might reach out to you via Slack. Somebody might reach out to you via email. Somebody might ask you a question on a Zoom meeting. So we love to have the service desk just to point everybody for their certain requests so that nothing gets lost or gets slipped through the cracks. So here we have, especially for our events, things like a swag request, setting up their baking information to get reimbursed, because we do give them $15 per person for attendees. That was more when we were in person. Now we're kind of giving out those virtual gift cards. That's where Tremendous came into play. Yeah, we have a section for events requests, and we also have another section for other leader requests like certifications. We do give our leaders all of our certifications and badge exams completely free. I mean, what they deserve it, they're angels. But then also too, we're giving them things like lunch on us. Like if they meet another leader in the area or they travel somewhere to meet another leader, we'll pay for their lunch. And then we'll find other little ad hoc uses for this since they're already familiar with the tool. So we have like our annual conference where we're giving out free tickets to them and maybe a companion pass. We'll add that on here once a year just to make sure everything's streamlined and simplified for them and they don't have to look in one more place. And I know I mentioned like I'm very focused on events and leader program. We are fortunate enough to have a CMX team. It's a community experience team full of like a product manager, a dev and designer who owns our online community platform. But I did want to touch on this new gamification pilot that is launched. If you haven't heard of Bunchball, it's another gamification platform that we put on top of our online platform that just helps us automate more badges, more paths, more recognition, and more ways to say thank you. So doesn't really fully fit into like the events and leaders thing, but I did want to call it out because we had a hard time looking for another type of gamification platform to take it to the next level. So I thought, hey, we're talking about platforms and tools. Bunchball helped us get this done. Cool. So I know that was rapid fire because we've got about 10 minutes left, but everything crossed out here. I went through, but things that I didn't get to, program insights. We do use Qualtrics. We survey our leaders annually and then do a pulse survey 6 months after that. So that survey is going to be about like CSAT, their satisfaction with the program, the tools, the platforms, our communication, like that those high level insights. We also use Salesforce for our CRM. In the past meetings, I've touched on this, so I didn't want to do a whole nother slide of our automation in Salesforce, but our leaders' statuses, so like when they're active, at risk, inactive, are all automated through Salesforce, and we do have different types of automated emails sent out there as well. Chat tool, don't want to spend too much time on that. A lot of us, we do use Slack. It's nothing crazy or sexy. It gets the job done and they love it. That's how we communicate with our leaders and how they communicate with each other for one-off things. And then the last thing here is ongoing feedback. And we do use Trello for that. Stan, you mentioned dog fooding your own products. We love to do that. I'm finally getting away from that. Like, let's use tools that are meant for what we're trying to do because it makes our lives easier. But we do use ongoing feedback on Trello, and that ongoing feedback differs from our program insights in the way that it's like, hey, what would make your life easier on Bevy or on our online community platform that we could implement and work with our CSMs that way. But yeah, that's just like the high level tools that help us get our job done and make sure that leaders are successful in their journey. Yeah, and now I think Tiff will take it away with procuring one of these platforms, maybe if you're thinking about it.
Awesome. Thanks, Cassie. Great job. I had a question for you, actually.
Oh, yeah.
How often do you refresh the items that are available on the swag site?
That is only monthly.
Okay.
But that is also, yeah, it is an MVP that was launched with our Leader Hub like 2 months ago. So we're working with, I mean, obviously the ideal state is that it's like happening when it happens, but right now it is on a monthly cadence as we're figuring out the reporting for it. You know, I took from your last talk is like, yes, automation, or one of your talks is like automation is like where you want to get to, but obviously there are things in between that we need to make sure work before it's like completely automated. So that's where we're at right now. It's only updated on a monthly basis when they get that email.
Gotcha. That's actually pretty frequent. So kudos. That's awesome.
I mean, our leaders asked if it could be real time. So they always want more and more. I want to give it to them, but yeah.
Yeah. All right. What's the overlay in the community platform for additional badges and recognition again? I think it was Bunchball, right? Oh, thank you, Scott.
Bunchball. Yes.
On top of it.
Oh, yes, Scott. Awesome.
All right. So we have 5 minutes left. I think this was a super engaging conversation. I don't have time to go over my section, which is totally fine because I think people go through platform selections and may have an understanding of it. I did want to share one resource, and let's see, Stan, I will change this. It said public, sorry, I'll make sure to remove it before we share the deck out. But I think with the architecture template, you know, the diagram that Stan showed, that's the best one that I've ever seen. And, you know, I think as community operations people, it is really important to be able to show the, you know, your diagram and your architecture and how the different platforms are talking to one another, even what platforms you have. It was something that I was asked for all the time at Salesforce, not only from my team members, but also other team members who were looking to interact or engage with the community, whether it's in the back end from, you know, accessing reports on community engagement, or how many countries do we have community groups in, to, you know, even things like engaging front facing with the community, how to access it, where they live, the different resources they have, and everything like that. So I created just a very rough template. It's a Lucidchart template that I wanted to share with y'all. It's essentially just like a very starting point of tips and tricks, you know, some primary tech stack examples, as well as, you know, if you want to dive in a little bit deeper and go into leader tools and resources. That was a huge part of what I helped build at Salesforce. And, you know, you can use this, and, you know, it's daunting to start one because you start with a blank Lucidchart and you just see the grid and you're like, I don't know where to start. So we will share the link out with you, or you can screenshot it if you want, and feel free to build your own. And I think it was a comment earlier from someone that, you know, they would love to see kind of a side-by-side. I think Andy, I think you commented on it, being able to see a side-by-side of like, you know, what other community companies, what other communities are using similar platforms. Maybe you can share experiences, or, you know, if you see an integration that you don't have, you know, sharing that knowledge as well. So I will be sure to share this out. Again, just full caveat, it is a rough template. I also provided a sample architecture on the side of it, and it's nowhere near as beautiful as Stan's, but hopefully it'll get you started. All right. We have 3 minutes now. We had a ton of questions. Cassie, do you want to go over some of these questions?
Oh yeah, the ones that we captured on Confluence, right? So I was like, I don't see any more in the chat.
Yeah, and or also if anyone wants to chime in or share any questions that they have or recent experiences with tech stack, you know, we'd love to hear from you too. All right. Let's see. What have you found to be the most successful tactics for the rest of your team to adopt new processes and technology?
For me, are you asking me or for the group?
I think for the group.
I'll take it.
Or you can take it, yeah.
I'll take it, and if somebody can pull a thread from it, like they have a similar experience, then please feel free to pull the thread. But for me, whenever I moved into the operations role, it was very, I was a community manager previously, so we didn't have a community operations person. So I was like navigating my way through that. You know, I didn't want to put too much on the community managers because I know they had a lot on their plate, but I found for them to really adopt the new technology and processes, they had to be around from the very beginning. It wasn't something that I could just be like, hey, I think this is good, let me get your feedback. It was like, I tried that with one of our platforms, and it went, once it launched, it was like, how do I do this? What do I do this? It was a really good learning experience for me. To be like, hey, no, y'all are in the meetings from the beginning. And maybe if it's not all 5 of y'all, it's at least one of y'all to be like the driver to go back to the team with that context. But definitely always all of them testing the new things and making sure before it goes live or launches that they're just familiar and they know they have some kind of context. So really co-creating with the team and bringing them in at the beginning.
How do you see community ops stack up against product management as a role, intersections and divergence? That one is really interesting. It actually came up in a recent Slack thread that I had. I think it was in one of the Slack workspaces, but I think there definitely is an overlap. I personally didn't have any experience in product management before. Oh my God, my Roomba is going to start. Sorry, this is the worst timing. Okay. Working from home life. I think I never had any product management experience before I fell into the role, but you learn as you go. And I think as long as you have the basic skill set, of being able to manage the timeline, and kind of intersects with the project and program management part of it. But also you're the one who's developing the tech stack, and you're the one who's doing all the research, and you kind of by nature, by doing all that and having the conversations with the vendors and being in charge of the implementation and the maintenance and the bug fixes for the platforms, you do kind of fall into that role automatically. At least that's been my experience. Not sure if any of you have had the same. Former PM, lots of overlap. Yes. Yes, absolutely.
Someone said, if you only had one person running the community, what would you prioritize?
That's a great question. I think you need to have a community person and someone who understands what community is. A lot of people are still pretty vague on it, but in my opinion, I think, even if you don't necessarily have direct community experience, understanding the front end. So I had experience in customer support, and I spent a lot of time responding to cases, understanding what our customers' needs were, what the feature requests were, things like that. And then also, I had project management experience, being able to bring different stakeholders together, being able to, start a project from beginning to end. And combining both of those worlds, I think, was a really good starting point. And I would kind of recommend someone, with those skill sets to start a community. But again, it's not in a silo. You're going to need a lot of support from other stakeholders across the company and your customers. Okay,
Perfect.
we are 2 minutes
We're
over.
at time.
Oh my gosh, we should have scheduled longer for this one.
Well, it was fun talking about that with y'all. I mean, obviously you can catch us in CMX workspace, Community Club workspace, if you ever have any questions. We are recording this and we can put it on the event page on Luma after, so that you can see the slides, the recording, what have you. But yeah, thank y'all so much for joining and nerding
thank
out
you,
with us
Stan.
about platform.
Guest of
Thanks so much for
honor.
having me.
Stan,
Appreciate
yes.
it.
Cool. Well then, I guess if there's nothing else, we'll catch y'all later.
Till next time.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, y'all.